I would like to invite Mr. Kapil Kaul, CEO and Director, CAPA India, to deliver the keynote address. Mr. Kaul established CAPA in 2003, and since then, CAPA has firmly established itself as an industry-leading advisory and research firm, specializing in aviation, aerospace, and travel industries, undertaking over 1,000 consulting and research assignments for more than 400 Indian and global clients. Mr. Kaul for the keynote address.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It'll just take about 5 minutes or just a few seconds to set up. Okay, thank you. First of all, distinguished panel members in the dais, Mr. Piyush Srivastava, Joint Secretary from the Ministry of Shipping, distinguished leaders of the cargo and express industry, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here and to deliver this keynote address. The brief that I got a couple of days back is to present just a forward-looking outlook about the market. So we've broken that into passenger and cargo separately. We debated internally whether we will go micro or macro, as we decided to stay with macro so that we will share what's going to happen in the industry over the next 10 years. The theme of our presentation, it carries forward from what we believe is going to be the key directional input about the industry's direction in the next 10 years. Is that we have finally, I think, arrived. The theme inside is we are moving towards irreversible stability. But the key question that we keep asking our clients when we advise is that are we prepared? And I hope that I share some of the opportunities that Indian aviation has for the next 10 years, but also raise this question, are we prepared? Because we are going through a once-in-a-generation kind of an expansion. And that expansion requires preparedness. And are we prepared? And that's not just one segment of the aviation getting prepared. The whole system, the ecosystem has to get prepared. I'll just quickly introduce and for a few people, reintroduce CAPA to you. We have been established here for 21 years. 1,100 projects, both consulting and research. 300 consulting assignments just from the Indian office, 400 research, so overall 1,100 engagements. Our consulting is backed by an innovation and research center, that's our strength. And our USP is combination of depth of knowledge, independence, intellectual and financial integrity, commitment to outcomes, and hopefully deliver solutions and outcomes for our clients. This is our 4 pillars. I'll quickly run. We have an advisory service. We've worked across all the major markets. Innovation Research Center, a small digital transformation team, and a transaction and capital advisory business, which is supported reasonably up to about $5 billion of capital that have been raised by airlines and airports. 400 advisory and research clients across the globe, and quickly take you across to the main names that we have worked for. This is what we do currently, recent and current projects, from airports to working on a economic evaluation study for bankers, raising funds, working for airlines. So a whole range of consulting right across the aviation value chain. These are some of our clients. This is a sample of our clients that we work for. Now, before I start the presentation, some of you may ask us what's our experience in cargo and logistics. We've done a fair amount of work with Deutsche Bank, with Prologis, which was AMB Property Trust before, Macau Airport, Sapphire Cargo, which was the first long-haul US to India and China freighter airline. We worked for an African flag carrier recently, restructured their cargo business. KLM Cargo, Sri Lankan Airlines, GMR Hyderabad International Airport, and frankly, one of the most interesting projects that we did for the Hyderabad airport was to set up a sort of a blue dart and work with an integrator. SPI Aviation, Celebi, Menzies, Swissport, Wiscon, and we've done multidisciplinary studies with APAC, Asian Development Bank, Economic Board of Singapore, Government of Canada, and Vancouver Airport. But that's all about CAPA, to introduce you, to make you familiar as to what we do. The structure of today's presentation is a management note to set up the context of the whole theme that we have arrived. We are heading for a structure, irreversible stability. We quickly run through some key trends in FY24, look at an outlook for 25, give you key strategic issues in 25, because we believe FY25 is the foundation for growth forward. And we will also give you an overview for an outlook for air cargo going forward. There is a reason why we say that Indian aviation has finally arrived. And there's a reason why we say that we are heading for an irreversible stability. For some of you, may be already aware, some may not be aware about the developments that are happening. The remarkable milestone and the boldest reform since 2004 was the privatization of Air India. As a consumer and as a business, the value of it will be reflected in a couple of years. I haven't seen a reform like this in the aviation since 2003, where the government actually shaved off 60,000 crores of Air India, put it in a separate company. Most of it may not be recovered, but that was one of the boldest decisions. And as consumers and businesses, the value from that decision will get reflected in about a couple of years from now. When it was acquired, we thought that this is an inflection point, a critical inflection point for the industry that will stabilize the airline system. All of you are aware, we have lost $17–18 billion as an airline industry over the last 20 years. Every 2–3 years, every 2–3 years we have an optimism, but it is followed by a large airline exits. We've seen that consistently from 2003 and 4. Three of the biggest airlines in India, Kingfisher, Jet Airways, and as well as Go Air, have vanished in so many smaller airlines because of the unstable nature of the airline business, and all of them have fundamental reasons. When Air India was acquired by Tatas, we believed that it's an inflection point. However, at that point of time, it was not certain what would be the directional change of this decision. Over the 2 years, we have seen Air India Group, which is a fleet of about 270 aircraft as a combined entity, ordering about 470 aircraft, 370 options, and we take it as combined as about 840 aircraft, because every 6 months the options get converted. The group has added 40 aircraft in last year, expecting to take delivery of 5 aircraft a month. Whatever has happened in the last 2 years about Air India, which may not be visible to consumers and the industry, but there's a lot of work that's going on to make the aviation business in India structurally different. So this was the moment where we thought that the inflection point is leading to irreversible stability. Meanwhile, you have the largest Indian carrier, which is a fleet of about 370 plus, 980 on order, possibly 180 hours more. And if I take options on the wide body, then we are looking at almost about 1150, 1200 aircrafts in order, most of it which will be delivered over 10 years. They've been able to maintain a planned capacity induction through a combination of lease extensions, securing aircraft on dry and wet lease, inducting almost 4 aircraft a month. And these two principal players, ladies and gentlemen, will stabilize the airline industry structurally. And the foundational architecture for the growth over the decade will be led by these two airlines. The country's fleet is set to double in FY30, 5 years from now. It took the Indian industry almost 90 years to reach a fleet size of 700. It will take 5 years to grow from 700 to 1400. That's the pace. All of us need to be prepared for this growth, and my subsequent presentations will focus on that why we believe that whilst there's an opportunity, there are deep structural risks in case the growth can't be managed. Second positive element, that first time, at least to the best of my knowledge, and we track this sector deeply, that the airport infrastructure is ahead of demand, and there is an investment pipeline, which is some of it's already in spend, about $11 billion at the various stages of implementation. The metro airports, first time, will have a structural capacity about 600 million passengers. The NCR, which will see a world-class airport world-class airport infrastructure in a dual airport system. DIAL has recently increased capacity to about 100 million. They could go up to 130, 140. This will be complemented by another world-class greenfield airport coming about in December 2004 or April 2004, adding about 70 million. A combination about 200 million capacity in the northern India. And we believe it will change urban economics in NCR completely. Cargo would be the biggest beneficiary of Noida airport getting functional. It will open up a catchment area which we haven't seen before. Again, the Mumbai Metropolitan is again a dual airport system. Possibly in 12 months from now, we will see Navi Mumbai coming, and the system capacity would be 145. The whole of Navi Mumbai catchment area is again going to provide the Mumbai Metropolitan with infrastructure that had never existed. So for Navi Mumbai to come would mean that the cargo infrastructure, express infrastructure, logistics infrastructure would be for the entire system out of Navi Mumbai airport because they have the ability to build it accordingly. Adani Airports are significantly expanding its capacity at 6 non-metro airports. AI is investing about 4 billion out of the 11 billion. That's also to significantly enhance the non-metro airports. So in the previous slide, we talked about order book of Air India, and we talked one of India's giant airlines, Indigo, getting stronger and stronger, combining to make the airline system stable. The stable airline system needs an infrastructure ahead of time. So we will first time have infrastructure which we never had. We were always catching up, and this is the first time where we would have infrastructure ahead of time. However, there are some critical issues, and I'll flag some of it now. The terminal and runway infrastructure is being developed with greater attention may need to be given to ensure there are sufficient parking bays. So again, infrastructure issues. So there is infrastructure coming, but to accommodate 700 aircraft and possibly 1,000 aircraft by 10 years, where are the parking bays? Who is preparing for it? And what speed are we preparing? We must note that when an airline asks an airport for a parking bay and they get spread around many airports, it changes their cost base, it increases their cost base. So it's important that we get the parking bays ahead of time. Second is that how do we ensure the productivity of a single and dual runway airport need to be increased to international benchmarks. Ask anyone, a single runway is 40, 45. We have significantly lower, it could be demand-related issues also, but can our single airport runway systems get to about 40, 45? That's critical so that the productivity of assets is better. We expect that more airports will be privatized and modernized starting from this financial year, with 25 airports earmarked for monetization. We will see the greenfield airports in Chennai and Pune. Again, a very critical issue is how is our airspace looking like? Corporatization of ANS is necessary if airspace bottlenecks need to be addressed. Leaving corporatization aside, restructuring and optimization of ANS is essential if the projected growth has to be accommodated. So it's not that there's an opportunity, there is airport infrastructure, but there's so many other things that need to be addressed. So in our assessment and the experience of last 2 years indicates that we have evolved from an inflection point to a position of irreversible stability. We have two solid airlines with balance sheet, product, brand, willingness to become world-class airlines. For the first time, we had an airline recording a $1 billion profit. Frankly speaking, I've been in the airline industry for long. There was a collective $5-6 billion losses, $4 billion losses, and we have first time about a $1 billion profit by an airline, and I think FY25 we would mirror these numbers. Despite having 150 aircraft on ground, the domestic traffic grew about 13% in FY24 and international 22%, again reflecting the underpenetration of our demand. Airlines are pursuing first-time rational pricing. I haven't seen the kind of yields that we saw in December 23, or for example Q1 of FY24 or the present Q1. The airlines for the first time, and that's also driven by the supply considerations, that they have a record yield over the last 12-18 months. Finally, government and compliment the government of India to make sure that the VAT is reduced in most of the airports. We're looking forward for Delhi government to reduce the VAT and bring it aligned to Noida airport. That will change the airline pricing out of the NCR. Otherwise, it will be a difficult divide to bridge. Skill shortage, frankly, the potential growth constraints in this growth story. HR is forgotten when we plan for growth. There are thousands of, maybe 10,000 pilots required, flight dispatchers required, cabin crew required, ANS required, airworthiness directors required, ATC officials required, cargo industry requires professionals. When you are growing at a speed that we will see in 5 years, this could be a critical bottleneck. So again, a question to the industry is that, are we prepared for this growth? If you're making the industry double what took you 90 years, you're going to do that in 5 to 6 years. Do we have the skill, infrastructure to match for it? And please keep in mind, there are some regulatory issues like the FTDL that the government is revising. You will see poaching from Middle East carriers from the winter schedule of this year. So we are in for an interesting times. The growth is there, the opportunity is there, but we need to ensure that the skill infrastructure is with it. I'll quickly take you through the traffic forecast. Our outlook for FY23 is about 160 million. We updated it for FY24. We updated it mid of last fiscal, 155, and the outcome was 153. International traffic, our initial forecast was 72 to 75 million. We ended up being at 69.6 million. In FY24, domestic traffic set up a new record where the international returned to its pre-pandemic close of 70 million, which was actually the peak in 2019 and not FY20. So this is FY21, the domestic at 137 million, international at 66. FY23, we just closed the gap with domestic to about 135 million and 57 million for international, but FY24, 153 million for international, domestic, and about 70 million for international. Please keep in mind, there are about 150 aircrafts on ground. In spite of that, we have seen this growth. Most of the large airports, except Delhi, Calcutta, and Chennai, saw domestic traffic in FY24 grow faster than the national average. All major airports saw strong international recovery. I'll quickly move from this slide, but this gives you what FY24 was versus FY23. Except the 3 airports, the rest of them grew faster than the national average. This is the airline profitability, which we had updated in March 23. We expected the airlines to lose 1.4 to 1.6 billion. Ultimately, if we take Indigo off because it's an outlier, the industry will end up losing 300 to 400 million because the Indigo's performance, about $1 billion, has been exceptional. Passenger load factors are aligned, PLF is aligned, more or less whatever our outlook for FY24, it is more or less similar. This is the fleet size of the Indian carriers at FY24, 747 planes. It was similar to about what we had pre-COVID, but the operating fleet is much, much lesser. And in spite of that operating fleet being much lesser, we are going to grow at about, let's say we grew at about 13% in domestic. Outlook for FY25, 161 to 64 million, we'll see a 6 to 8% growth. Largely, there are serious capacity bottlenecks in domestic. International will grow at 10% because airlines like Air India, Indigo are focusing more on international. So we would see about 75 to 78 million domestic passengers. This is again a profitability forecast. We believe we will mirror FY24. Similar profitability, similar yields, similar PLF, crude and forex more or less in the same range. This is the aircraft order book. Projected to have a registered fleet of 800 aircraft by end of FY25, an increase of 84 aircrafts over FY24. On the left-hand side is what we would expect the projected fleet to be in March 25. On the right-hand side would be the order book, 986. Air India Group 458 because they've taken some deliveries. The CAPA is 204. SpiceJet's order is 144, even if we discount SpiceJet. We have roughly about 1,600 planes, 1,700 aircrafts in order. Get the options included. If I take the options of 70 wide body for Indigo, 370 for Air India, we are well over 2,000 aircraft that is likely to be inducted, both for growth as well as replacement over the next 10 years. These are the aircraft that are grounded. 75, 80 to Indigo, 25, 30 of Air India, SpiceJet is 34. The total operating fleet is much lesser than we had before pre-COVID. And this slide actually demonstrates the supply crisis that the industry has. This is FY24 generating, I'll skip this. This is just an airline-related CASK and financial performance. We can skip that. Again, the kind of losses pre-tax that the industry is going to be incurring for FY25. So I'll quickly move to the key strategic issues in this slide. One is between FY20 and 24, the traffic registered about 4.8% growth. Due to various factors such as COVID, supply chain issues, and capacity constraint, this is a very slow growth for an emerging market. For a market like India to grow at 4% for almost 4 years is reflective of the capacity crisis we have. Supply chain constraint continue to be complex, challenging. Perhaps it's the biggest unknown. We have no idea as of now when the supply chain challenges are going to be over. Yield continues to be a record, largely because of capacity reasons and some sensible pricing by airlines, and that reflects in financial performance at all the airlines and the record profitability of Indigo that we saw. We expect the benefit of consolidation are yet to reflect on industry's competitive structure. It will take Air India maybe about time till next fiscal or mid of next fiscal so that the benefits of that consolidation of 4 airlines merging into 2 and having one integrated global network, that will reflect from maybe second half or first half of FY25. That will bring some competitiveness that not only competitiveness for the entire industry but also for the consumer. Another big decision of Indigo's to introduce business class in domestic and operate a wide body aircraft is a reflection that is new Indigo in the making. The business class introduction is going to disrupt or soften premium pricing. It could potentially have impact on the full service model. So there's a lot of different things happening at the same time, and these are other key issues. Is the labor is in transition, the productivity measures that drive the pilots, AMEs is changing, that adjustments is in place. It may take time for the pilots and engineers to get adjusted to the new system, but that's another factor that is structural that needs to be overcome. Bilateral is a constraint. There's no capacity for last 10 years that the government has given. We expect that bilaterals will be opened up. And I think the new government has a packed agenda to ensure that the institutional infrastructure, I'm not talking about physical infrastructure, the institutional infrastructure is in place. What do I mean by institutional infrastructure? Policy, regulation, fiscal regime, correctional, both on direct and indirect taxes, policy competitiveness, and many other areas, because we are doubling in size and scale. So it's fundamental to institutional infrastructure improvement, which is strengthening of DGCA, possibly hiving it off. We've been the biggest advocates of hiving off the DGCA, turning BCAS into a transport TSA like America, in what we have in America, augmenting airspace, corporatizing ANI. So there's a lot of work that is to be done. And that's the point I will leave you for the first side of my presentation, is that you're going to see an exceptional growth, but are we prepared for that growth? And if we are prepared for that growth, because we are doubling in the next 5 years, this industry needs those structural improvements into this. So I'll skip this part and give this presentation to give you why we are going to be at a very interesting phase. I'll skip that. I'll shift to cargo particular, but I have this slide. Maybe I'll spend about a couple of minutes on this. 153 million in FY24 will go to 300 to 350 million. It's almost going to double domestic. International is going to move from 70 to 140, again going to double. We will see a 12 to 15% CAGR over the next 5 years. See the number at 2043. Almost 1 billion domestic passengers, when India's economy could be 35 trillion, and the international will be about 370 to 400 million. So we're going to go through decades of growth, but again, are we prepared? And do we have that infrastructure for preparedness that's critical? 2 largest carriers will have 1,700 fleet, 1,700 fleet by FY35, and that's game-changing. We expect Indigo to be roughly about 1,000 aircraft or 900 plus aircraft by FY35. And look at 2043, you're going to be 3,250 aircraft to 4,000 aircraft. So transformational growth. Now coming to, just give us a minute more, I'll close the cargo outlook because this is passengers so that you know the kind of growth that we're going to have. These are forecast indicative right now of the domestic and cargo volumes handled by airports in India. If you look at in FY24 relative to FY19, which was the peak for cargo, we're still down by about 3.1%. If you look at international, we're still down 7% compared to FY19. Going back to the next slide, this gives you an air-on-air growth for domestic and international cargo volumes at key airports. You have Bombay, whose domestic is down and international is up. If you see, for example, the same for Chennai. Ahmedabad has certainly grown their domestic significantly, but Pune's domestic has come down. So different trends at different airports, but largely international 7% down compared to its peak, and domestic about 3% compared to its peak. These are our projections, and this is something that should interest you. We expect incremental tons of about 3.3 million between 24 to 35. In the next year, 10 years period, about 3 to 3.3 million incremental tonnage will be available. We expect the domestic to grow at about 6 and the international to grow at about 7%. The absolute increase in the cargo volumes handled by FY30 will be 3x the incremental tonnage during the next 10 years. Is the industry prepared for it? And I just want to spend, this is the key part of our presentation and the message to the cargo industry. We will have 200 wide bodies by FY35, 150 more to be added. In the next 10 years, we'll have 400 aircraft deployed for regional international. That means we are going to be having almost 550 aircraft for international. We project that we'll have 30 narrow-body freighters and 10 wide-body freighters by 2035. In fact, we may see by next fiscal dedicated freighters on the narrow-body and increase in the wide-body freighters. So our estimate is that this will generate an additional 2.5 million tons of annual cargo capacity. 60% load factor, internationally sometimes it's 50 because India is a growing market. We have taken 60% load factor. This could support 1.5 million tons of international cargo volumes. And this does not take into expansion by foreign carriers because the bilateral is a constraint. We don't know when that will be opened up. So I think we're going to be seeing a transformation on the international cargo side, both long haul, ultra long haul, and the regional international routes. So is the cargo industry, which is all of us together, including government and the industry, ready for this kind of a growth? What does this growth mean to all of you? Do we have the infrastructure? Greenfields may have designed infrastructure for cargo. What about brownfields? What about technology? What about people? What about skills? What about distribution? What about custom processes and efficiency? If we have to take advantage of the structural changes bought by the two airlines, putting in about 550 aircrafts over the next 10 years on regional international, are we ready for it? So there will be, in this, many other factors, but this is something that you should see it. Now, quickly taking across another interesting slide is to show how our short and medium hauls using narrow-body equipment, the new stations that will be opened up, and the existing places where they will have more flights. It could be a combination of narrow-body and wide-body. If you go next, it gives you what happens to the new destination that will be opened up in Americas, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia. Many destinations. Opened by wide body, some will have multiple frequencies, some will have single frequency. Across North America, Asia, Europe, you will have these flights. This is a combined structure of what looks to be the new passenger network, but underlying would be the cargo network. So what do we see? And I've put some indicative numbers. London Airport by 2035 could have a daily capacity of 400 tons. If you go to New York Metropolitan or New York airports, it's about 200 tons a day, FY35. San Francisco, 160 tons, Melbourne, 120. These are indicative, but this is what we will see per day tonnage available, non-stop, multiple frequency products. So this is the network for you, driven around passenger, but the belly capacity of wide body, around 15 tons to 20 tons, is going to provide you that kind of capacity. And for the first time in India's aviation history, we will have these many opportunities available. Now, if you look at the passenger network and the belly capacity it will generate, is closely aligned to the markets that India represent India's leading merchandise trading partners. So when you go to these markets, both in the regional international routes and international, United States, UK, France, UAE, Saudi, Hong Kong, Netherlands, most of them are going to be our key trading partners. So we are going to fly increased frequency to these markets where either we have a trade surplus or in some markets we have an air freight surplus. This is the import share and this is the export share. So you're flying these kind of capacity of about 400 tons to London airports or 200 to New York. You're only going to markets where there is already a large export share and large import share. We're also going to the markets where there is a trade surplus. and the deficits on the right-hand side are going to be bridged with the new FTAs that are coming. So when you fly to US, when you fly to United Kingdom, Netherlands, France, and Italy, there's already a trade surplus, and with the United States, we have an air freight surplus. So all this 200 tons or 400 tons direct connectivity, that's going to go to places where there's already a market. Again, are we ready? And again, on the right-hand side, are we bridging the deficit? This is the merchandise mix that constitutes products which is suitable for air freight. This is also going to change, but this is ex-petroleum metals and chemicals in FY20 for exports and imports, and this is going to be, this trade basket is going to be significantly changing. So last slide, we have, okay, this is for domestic, which is government reforms, increased manufacturing and commercial activity, new high-value orders. So there's a lot happening even for domestic cargo. I'll skip this. This is pharmaceutical industry going through a transformational change. This is gems and jewelry going through a transformational change. My last slide, and I will finish with this, is important, and that's the key message I'd like to leave all of you with. This transformational growth of seeing in next 5 years a fleet doubling up, which took us 90 years, will have its own set of challenges and disruptions, accentuated with the combined other disruptive forces. So hence preparation and planning are critical for success. What do we see in this once-in-a-generation growth? 1,000 aircraft plus additional by 2035, 500 million additional passengers, 3 million tons of additional air cargo to be handled, UAVs, eVTOL, general aviation, helicopters, extra. We'll all see this in the next 10 years. This is combined, this generational growth, once-in-a-generation growth, is combined with digital disruption. New technologies, new business models, speed and agility, changing consumer and customer experience and consumption story. The digital disruption is combining with this once-in-a-generation growth. There's another disruption, which is the environmental disruption. So at the same time, when you're growing exponentially for next 10 years, you will do it with digital disruption, you'll do with an environmental disruption. All of this requires a new way of thinking, a new way of preparedness. And ladies and gentlemen, believe me, if we don't have that kind of a planning, we don't prep up to that level, there are more risks to the industry than opportunities. Otherwise, I believe that we have finally arrived after 2 decades of instability. We are heading for irreversible stability, driven around 2-3 principal carriers, and the expansion in long haul and ultra long haul of our 550 aircrafts are going to leave each one of you with structural opportunities, provided we recast distribution, relook at our infrastructure, make sure our skill infrastructure is planned. This is going to be a game-changing decade. The only thing is we should be prepared for it. Thank you very much, and I'll leave rest